So for small businesses, for smaller agencies, or for freelancers starting out, using DIY, low code, no code, drag and drop technologies is perfect. It's fine for the first year or so, maybe 2 years, whatever. It's what has given many studios their start in life, in their commercial life. For a digital studio, however, supporting multiple technologies quickly becomes a good old-fashioned train wreck. Not even a good old-fashioned one, a modern-day train wreck, an airship disaster. It's an I think I can see where I parked my car from here cruise ship disaster. It's all of them. I'm trying to avoid the term cluster, but you get where I'm coming from. Not only do multiple subscriptions constantly hemorrhage cash out of your studio, it's the human cost that creeps into your studio while no one's looking. No matter whether the studio outsources or hires in-house talent, the contractor wager bill becomes unbearable fast. Supporting multiple techs invariably requires multiple specialists. They're expensive. They're hard to pin down, especially if they're remote contractors. And when you layer over this, the hidden cost of administering these various technologies, the specialist talent it takes to maintain all of these projects, it becomes a living nightmare. Studios quickly find themselves under-resourced, unproductive, unappealing to would-be staff and clients alike, and they spend valuable time putting out fires across multiple technology stacks, driving productivity right down through the floorboards, right into the basement. Your efficiency will drop like a brick in a bath, as we say back at home, and your delivery will slow down to a snail's pace. Ironically, the reason tech fragmentation exists in the first place is exactly the reason you'll be looking for a new solution. The solutions you are replacing were too niche, too constrained, or they're in a sunset language or on a twilight platform. So now we get to our first tip of the day. Don't perpetuate the chaos. Find a technology that supports whatever scope your clients require and whatever design your creative director expects your talented developers to execute. That is the goal. Searching for universality where you can get it, rather than either putting up with, one, the constraints of no code, or two, super specialist tech. Unless you think there are enough businesses, or there is enough business and projects out there with legacy specialist tech that it's worthwhile having a specialist team for every tech present on your client roster. The problem with this direction is that while you can cash in short term on offering rare talents, when the clients wake up to the inefficiencies they're paying for and move on, and they inevitably do, you'll find that yourself and your team have been deeply investing in a sunset phase business model. For our agency, it started with a series of new builds, right? We brought on a lead developer with Ruby on Rails coursing through his veins. Got the team started on a few e-com sites. Then Magento crept into the studio just as he was creeping out. And we had a WordPress developer replace him. And then it was a series of Umbraco sites, WordPress, the stable of technologies just blew out. And the next thing you know, we're scouring the globe for specialist devs who want to work on these projects. Suffice to say, chaos ensued. That was supposed to be a video. However, suffice to say, chaos ensued. These specialist devs are in demand, and so they should be. No one begrudges these talented techs their payday, but it's inefficient over time in a studio environment, especially when, as is increasingly the case, with worldwide talent shortages for developers, these people don't have the capacity to take on projects. But I can tell you from first-hand experience, if you can find them and they do have time to look at your projects, they're not going to be cheap. They will be expensive. Great for them, not so great for your studio bottom line. The takeout here, universality is key to a successful digital studio. Right, on to number 2. We've got there a little bit early. What is the vendor trying to achieve with their solution? Research the full stack and the people behind the technology. So what is a vendor trying to achieve? What are their stated motives, their vision, and does it align with your goals? Are they pioneering progressive change without any kind of overt commercial agenda, like Tim Berners-Lee here, the founder of the internet, providing long-term value to their community, to their fellow human beings for generations to come? Or are they all about maximizing shareholder value at all cost, kind of heading for IPOs or positioning themselves for exit or acquisition, a la Adam Newman, founder of WeWork? Or is it all fame, 10-gallon hats, and intergalactic travel? Go Jeff. So research. Who are the developers, the contributors? What sector do they come from? Are they part of a vibrant community? Are they part of your community? For instance, it's unlikely that as a digital studio, you're going to be magnetized by a piece of tech, MarTech or creative tech, if the founder came from an illustrious career in banking and finance or Baltic oil and gas. You've got to research the culture. What's it like in the vendor organization? Check out their socials. Is this technology a forerunner? Does it have a competitive advantage and a transparent development roadmap? Or is it a Me Too technology? So understanding and aligning your studio with the vendor's why is vitally, fundamentally important when selecting a technology partner. The technology partner that will in no small way determine the trajectory of your own service delivery and your overall business viability. Number 3, developer buy-in. Hugely important. Now, I'm not saying that you would unilaterally take the intern's word for what's hot and what's not in tech, although from experience, they're probably more on top of emerging tech than most. But at the same time, top-down implementation is unlikely to cut it. The talented people who work in your studio with a solution on the daily must lead and embrace the change. For any tech to work for any length of time, you need internal champions and a community. Anyone thinking of forcing their bright, spirited, talented team to work day in and day out in a technology they loathe, it may not end well. First, it will be unscheduled days off to attend workshops. These are cleverly disguised job interviews. And if you don't clock on to what's happening before long, employee churn, the great resignation is pretty much guaranteed. And if you get this bit wrong, you'll essentially have blacklisted your studio as an employer of choice. And as for hiring the best talent, it's just not going to happen. So expect to invest time with your development team to sniff test and road test the technology, then find an internal project to run the tech and your team through its paces. Next, collaborate, introduce the technology into a test work stream. And if it's a tech that touches on the client side, offer to do a project with them. Maybe you do it gratis, depends on your relationship with the client, of course. Work with your client side team to create a real world scenario, maybe choose a not-for-profit between you and do a piece of work to score some brownie points with them. So work with them, get their feedback, evaluate the technology together, and make the decision as a team. Key takeout here is to be inclusive of your developers and create a team of digital champions. All right. Tip number 4 is all about universal creativity. I like talking about creativity in any agency environment or creative studio. It's kind of what I know. At a superficial level, it's the work environment, right? It means air hockey and pool tables, unlimited access to the drinks fridge, and a not so rigid approach to timesheets and working remotely. Essentially, trying to make the workplace fun, like a home away from home. Over the past couple of years, as you'll be absolutely aware, with staff working from home full time, this has been a a challenging aspect of studio life for anyone delivering creative projects. Although thankfully that all seems to be kind of leveling out. I'm not sure how it's working out in Singapore, but back home, it's pretty much back to normal. But at a more visceral, meaningful level, when your goal is to maintain high levels of creativity, throughput, productivity, you want to reduce your rework, and you want to keep the awards cabinet full of bright, shiny things, you need your brightest, shiniest people at their absolute best. Creativity isn't the sole domain of executive creative directors and designers. Devs who code are equally creative souls. They're problem solvers, they're lateral thinkers, they're technology-centric architects. These are the people who envision, ideate, and build elegant solutions to your clients' most burning needs through effective, profitable projects. The number of times I've heard agency suits sell in a digital project to a client by starting their pitch with, and quote, building a website or an app is much like building a house. You need to invest the time and the budget to get the foundations right. I mean, this is a well-traveled statement. Genius. And that's definitely correct, right? As I said earlier, most web projects and app projects are rescoped to suit the evolving requirements of the business within a year or two. But the talented people that you want in your team are creative thinkers, all right? They're super smart, so don't bury them underground, constantly refactoring the foundations of projects when they want to be building the next Louvre, the next Shard, the next kind of Burj Khalifa, right? So here's the trick. When you're selling a project in, keep highlighting the value of getting the foundations right. All right. Keep leading in with building a website or an app. It's much like building a house. You need to spend the time to get the foundations right. That's great. Let's keep doing that. It enhances the value of the project in the client's mind. But don't be a dummy and actually have a back-end development team, infrastructure, hosting, and sysops people building the sites from scratch each and every time if you can possibly avoid it. And believe me, you can. What a monumental waste of time and money and lost opportunity to deliver more valuable projects when a universal platform will enable apps and sites and digital projects to be built with the foundations already in place. Get on the right side of time, effort, margin, and developer happiness and client joy by implementing a technology that gets out of the way of your studio production process. Number 5 is a slightly divisive one. So implementing value-based billing in your studio. The key here is to rethink how you value your outputs and how to get the best out of your team. So think more in terms of aligning the project's worth to the project's worth to your client's business and the value the project present to the market than filling your studio with dollars for hours. It's just a mindset change, all right? Think, what does the lifetime value that this project represents to your client, and think in terms of being a partner rather than a provider when you're thinking of your billing structure. And think of the creatives, the developers, they work in a creative studio. They are creative people. They're much overlooked as being, introverts and all that sort of thing. They may be, but they're creative souls, right? So if you're operating your studio strictly in an hours for dollars sort of regime, it may be time to reimagine the timesheet mentality. In part because creatives hate timesheets. They hate them. They're seen as oppressive, and they make people whose otherwise creative brains, which are trained to look forward and problem solve, look backwards and have to do admin. It really is a distressing thing for creatives to have to deal with timesheets. So move away. And also clients resent being billed for every 6 minutes, as though you're lawyers, accountants, or maybe plumbers. Move away from billing time as a commodity. This represents a really poor way of monetizing the value that's inherent in your studio. It should never be about how long it takes. It's all about the value that you and your team's expertise, creativity, and experience adds to a project and its outcome that you're offering. So at least think about making the move to value-based billing. You need to productize your outputs and stop kind of interrupting your developers, their thought flow, their productivity, and their genius with reminders every 6 minutes to fill in their timesheet. Now, that doesn't mean no timesheets at all. I mean, you've still got to have that high-level view. So use them for high-level in-studio reference so that you can track general efficiency and productivity. So what do you need to change? What do you need to change to actually implement value-based billing? Probably not much, if anything. It is literally a mindset change, and it's how you talk to your client about how they're going to get billed. So probably not a lot's going to change for the client. You still need to provide an accurate technical scope. You're doing that already. You've got to quote against the technical scope. You've got to change in this regard. You should be using blocks of work as key pieces, phases, or stages without stating granular hours or rate per hour. Adopting an internal scope for scoping is a great way to go. If this video actually works, there's a handy tool for internal scoping that a good friend of ours, Kiwi friend in the UK, has been developing. And this should go. Oh no, video's not going to go. Okay, so scope, I'll have to backfill with that one. So basically, scope, I'm not going to explain scope. If that video is not working, I'm going to gloss over that one. So you need to basically scope out your product, your project. You're always going to be doing that. Tweak your client-facing reports to remove the granularity of hours for dollars, but then also add in a blanket kind of rework component to every project to cater for overages along with any kind of account admin time. And build to scope exactly. Like build to scope is exactly as it's been agreed and signed off, and anything out of scope is a negotiation. Scope creep is kind of the absolute evil that you want to avoid. These are all things that you should be doing by now. So the rule of thumb: if you have a client who wants to know exactly where every single minute has been spent on their project, instead of marveling at how engaging and performing their site will be, work on getting new clients. Internally, you need to ask your staff, your studio staff, to regularly record projects. This under value-based billing, this is what we do in our studio. Is basically you're asking them to go by the kind of like the hour, half day, or week, if possible, and so that you're not getting in their face with admin. Don't switch resources between projects. Have an hour per day or a day per week of request work, and absorb this into each client's cost of business, i.e. kind of just don't sweat the small stuff. And your clients will love not having to sign off on every little change and getting billed for their own mistakes, which is essentially what your hours for dollars billing is doing. Value-based billing will lift the admin and internal staff angst that is inherent in just about every studio that I've ever been privy to look inside of, and lifts that angst off the studio. It will literally change the vibe in the business for the better, leading to more fluid productivity, less disruption, happier staff, and from first-hand experience, I can tell you that clients are happier as well. It's just a more relaxed relationship. But there is probably one person left to convince, and it's the CFO. CFO will probably freak out. That's what they do pretty That's what they do best at first. But when your CFO sees productivity, creativity, and talent retention improve in the business, they eventually calm down, or hopefully they do. So now, while we're talking about CFO expectations, let's talk about ROI in a digital studio. All right. C-level decision makers, so your C-suite, pretty near the top, they want their board to believe that they're on top of their studio ROI. But really, like all of us, they don't know what they don't know. All right. When it comes to digital ROI, if your studio has multiple tech or entire tech stacks being built and serviced, or worse, a mix of both, your studio is busy being busy. It's not busy being productive or necessarily profitable. Plus, you have the overhead and resourcing issues on the near horizon for sure. We take a look at a couple of projects built by a friendly agency in New Zealand, and for the record, most New Zealand agencies are ridiculously friendly. First up is a relatively simple, straightforward campaign landing page for a hand dryer product, although I would suggest that the video is not going to play. But is it? Okay, it's not going to. But anyway, so here's the breakdown for this landing page. If anyone wants to chase me up on what these examples are, I'm out there in the Texpo, and we can show you exactly what's happening there. So basically, we have a campaign landing page, fairly simple, straightforward lead generation site with the ability to purchase, plenty of CSS, video, contact forms, the usual things that you'd expect. Checkout, and you've bought yourself a hand dryer. Now, for a breakdown of the process and the inputs, up on this slide, up on the screen there, we've got basically a straight run test between the two products, the two platforms at least, and this kind of shows you the amount of time that can be wasted in some technologies. Now, WordPress, I'm not bagging WordPress per se. WordPress is fantastic for a lot of applications. It's just when you put it into a studio work stream, there's just a lot of duplication, and there's a lot of unnecessary steps to a build. All right, and so when we sort of take that out to an average labor cost, and this is literally just raw labor cost, a WordPress build that might take 250 minutes at basically $1 a minute, you can see right there that there's a decent whack of margin that you're basically giving away through inefficiency. And then after, post build, there's all of the different things to think about, like plugin management, hosting, plugin payments, all of that sort of thing, versus a more universal approach. So in that example, when we do the math, by using a universal platform, you are 270%. You have a 270% advantage over other technologies by using a universal approach. Okay, and you're able to deliver with one single developer in your studio. You don't need multiple disciplines. Case study number 2 that we don't have the video of, I'm sure. I'm predicting that. And this one was a doozy. So this is again, this is comparing a universal platform like Blutui versus a stack like Laravel. And in a straight line test, project for project on a web application scale project, essentially comparing a complex data-driven group home builder site and a comparable web application project in Laravel. This is the kind of the difference that you have with a more universal approach to your studio. Okay, look at the hours difference in that build by having to do all of that back-end sysops, data engineering, all of those things that come wrapped up in a box in a universal platform. So look at that, total time spent, 244 hours, over 244 hours versus 100 hours. So that's straight out a 244% advantage in your studio. So that's at least doubling. If you're working to capacity, you're able to get at least twice as many projects through in any given time. And it's literally by your technology selection. And when we put the dollars over that, when we layer over the dollars, that's the difference in basically wage cost alone to your project. Whether you're contracting in, you'd be paying a lot more if you're contracting in. But if you had an in-house team, then the values are right there: 14,000 versus 5 as your baseline cost. And again, we've got the post-build components that go on, universal versus a multi-discipline technology. All right. So 244% more efficiency, built into your studio just by virtue of your decision making when you're selecting your platform. On a web app scale project like the Golden Homes example, which you didn't see, but chase me down later. This means a team of 2 or 3 devs is reduced to a single front end dev. All right, and that's not to say that these devs are, their futures are freed up. Their futures are freed up to do more valuable projects, because the kind of projects that we're talking about in any studio environment that I've been a part of, the devs begrudge that kind of work and rework. I mean, they're building the foundations of something that they've built a version of 10 times before. It's not even interesting work. So adopting a more universal studio technology to build a wider range of sites, essentially anything, in a single technology, in turn reduces your studio reliance on specialist language developers. It increases your exposure to a broader number of projects. It improves your ability to hire, which is important, with the only requirement for a sole front-end developer per project rather than a multidiscipline team. And it reduces studio admin from being across multiple technologies and multiple outsourced vendors or staff to a single platform over time. I mean, that does take a little bit of time, but once you get there, it is a lot more comfortable place to be. So we can kind of reconvene after this, probably coming to a bit of a close. There's about 20 minutes worth of videos that haven't sort of worked, so I do apologize for that. But keen to dive into any questions and answers, and I'll provide the answers. So who wants to go first? I'm sure there's a WordPress developer or two out there that wants to slay me.
I develop on WordPress.
You do?
Yes.
Right, get out.
But no, I like what you've got to say.
So
it's very interesting.
Okay, anyone has any question?
Yes. Here we go.
Ready?
So where do you open this? Hello. All right. So by the way, first a great presentation. So my question is, so we're actually using WordPress in our company. So
Good.
most of the marketing website that we're building. The question is, how much is the support on terms of features and functionalities? Because you mentioned that there's a lot of plugins that we can use
Yep.
in WordPress, and the plugins are really rich. So the problem is, how rich is the in terms of functionalities that Blutui supports?
So this presentation has been around general. I mean, yes, I've been talking about the Blutui product or platform, but the thrust of this is about universal rather than fragmented technologies, right? So that's kind of part of it. But if you're talking about actually, what does it take to build in Blutui? You need to be an HTML or CSS. You need to be able to develop in HTML or CSS. You need to build out a lot of your own assets. Okay, so there is no kind of plug-in kind of development community that's built 20 or 30 years worth of plugins. That doesn't happen. You're literally building, you're coding your own sites. Yeah. So you're building out your own solutions, but that in our scenario with Blutui, so we're for agencies only. All right. So unless you are a digital agency or a creative studio, and essentially we can't support you in the first place, but for those agencies, they're literally building out their own assets, and their assets are their IP. They're not, because these people are building out for global brands like, say, Audi or whoever, Unilever or whoever, who don't want their UX or UI kind of repurposed for another project, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's for advanced user. Yeah. Graeme?
Yeah.
Hey, Graeme.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good. Graeme, I represent a digital tech agency, all right?
Just speak right into it.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So my question is, usually what we do, we don't use WordPress, because the kind of requirements that we get from the clients are pretty much more customizable.
Yes.
Say, for example, we create web-based apps or e-com solutions. We can use Shopify for e-coms or BigCommerce, but the requirements are too robust for that. So I just want to understand that your platform, the Blutui, if I may not correctly saying it, how does that support, the customization level? Because yes, we will our own assets. We have the full stack developers back in the studio.
Yes.
I just want to understand the reliability of the platform, because people are more familiarized with, creating HTMLs and CSS and the backend system like PHP or .NET framework for, better backend support. So how does that work in that space?
Yeah. So if you've got a PHP developer, if they know HTML and CSS, they can build in Blutui. So if I'm hearing your question correctly, there's a really low learning curve to get into Blutui, I guess. I mean, it's a bit of a mindset change, I guess. Like the whole stack is on Laravel, right? So Blutui is built on a Laravel is a Laravel stack. So when I'm making a straight line comparison with Laravel, I've got to be a little bit careful because we love it, right? It's our tech of choice. But yeah, I mean, you're building on a platform that is going to support whatever you want to build. All right. I mean, in terms of we're heading towards an open API. I mean, early next year, so that broadens it out even more. But you wouldn't rely on Blutui for a big, heavy e-commerce site yet. Okay, I mean, Shopify have absolutely nailed that to the floor. They know what they're doing with that. But what a lot of agencies tend to do is take the best of Blutui and put Shopify modules into Blutui. All right. So basically, you're checking out through Shopify and with their presumably Stripe or whatever is the payment system. So you can put that together really quite easily. And literally, you can. Well, most developers, create their own favorite. They use their own favorite tools. It's tools agnostic, and you can be developing on whatever system you like, kind of thing. Yeah. Hope I've answered that. Have I answered it? Yeah.
I'm good at throwing. I'll get it right over
Any
there.
more? Even just for the fun of it. Just. No,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. Not. Yes. Thank you very much, Graeme.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone.